Hey y'all, BB Soto here, and we're revisiting a theme that was introduced to us in the High Priestess card, but as you can see, is present in many other cards in the deck. Um, Now you're looking at something that I have hanging on my wall right here. Uh, when trying to kind of make all these connections, I needed the visual, and I could have made a much better looking digital version of this, but I'm not gonna lie, I didn't feel like taking the time to do that. So I hope you are okay with my super hoopty visual display today. So we're talking duality in the tarot as introduced to us by the High Priestess card with those columns that are behind her. So we have two columns. One is dark, one is light, and then in the opposite, we have a light letter on the dark one and a dark letter on the light one. And I think that most people might be able to think of a symbol that is pretty widespread. It's very popular. It's known pretty well in mainstream pop culture. That is light on one side, dark on the other side, with the opposition, the little holes. Of course, I'm talking about the yin yang. So, this is that same kind of concept. But duality doesn't just speak about yin yang. Because yin and yang refers to light, dark, passive, active, feminine, masculine, giving and receiving, which is pretty encompassing of a lot of dual natures, right? You have light and dark. We have concepts of good and evil. We have, short and tall, big and small, um, male and female. And the thing about duality is one cannot exist without the other. So you cannot have light if you don't have dark for the light to shine in. You can't have dark if you don't have light for the dark to darken. So, but then within duality, we have the way they interact with each other. And that shows up in the deck, at least in the Smith-Waite deck, in a number of ways. And so I want it to be clear that for all intents and purposes, when it comes to tarot in general, I believe that duality will be present in any deck. If at the very minimum, the number two speaks to that, so anything numbered two, whether the imagery in it is super about like duality or not, that's the presence of that number. So, however, the connections that are made through this major arcana that I'm talking about today is going to be pretty specific to this deck because different artists have interpreted the images differently. And Pamela Smith was very clever and calculated in interweaving themes throughout her deck that other artists might do in their own way. But if they altered, and I have examples of one of my other favorite decks to show, like if they altered the imagery, some of these connections that I'm making from one card to the next may not stand in other decks. So, but I do think it is still good to look at this because I know it's helped me start to look at other decks and think about that. So we have these two columns. So we have several ways duality is being presented in a number of the cards that relate to the High Priestess. And we're going to start with the columns, okay? In general. We have columns reemerge in the Hierophant, in the Justice card, in the Death card back here, and in the Moon card. So in some way, and every tarot writer I have read that mentions this carrying through has said they believe, and I agree, that these columns are reappearing in these cards for a specific reason. And because that which being that there's different ways duality works or doesn't work together. Okay, there's different meanings when we see the presence of duality. One being that masculine and feminine. Okay, so we see that. I know I said we were going to start with the columns, and then I realized I think that's probably not going to work necessarily because I think we will come back to the columns. There's a reason they're in a line and other things are kind of spread out. So we have that masculine, feminine duality. We see that with the magician to the high priestess. The magician card is yellow, red. Those are colors very much associated with yang energy, with active energy. Blues, cool tones, those are very much passive energy. That yin and yang is that active and passive is in most cultures associated with active as masculine, passive as feminine. I believe because, well, during the day we can be more productive and, you know, to put patriarchy, misogyny, whatever aside, historically speaking, the men went out and were active in producing, and the women stayed in and handled the caring and the nurturing and all of that. Not to say they weren't active, but there was that. So that's associated with like the sun during the day, during the daytime, the sun is actively helping the crops grow, and during the night, the moon rules the tides and that water's coming in, and that has the long-term effect on crops and growth. We also have procreation. Men come in and in the active, and then women, yes, we are the ones that grow the child. However, it is something that's happening within, and the men have done an action to cause it to happen, and the women are then carrying it on in a long, I wouldn't say passive because I've had two babies and I would not say passive, but at the end of the day, the man has to act to make that happen, and then the woman acts as a vessel. So that's where those associations with active and passive go with masculine and feminine. So the magician and the high priestess are the masculine and feminine aspect of divine wisdom. The empress and the emperor are the feminine and masculine presence of like nature, of us being beings of nature, beings who create, beings who live and work and procreate and all that. Okay, so we have those aspects of duality, and those would probably fall into balance and relationships, duality and the balancing of relationships. So then we have unions. And in this way, the Hierophant is the first card where we see other people appear. And there are two people in front of two columns. And one of now the Hierophant usually means like sacred traditions, like kind of the doctrine, canon, teachings, guide, that kind. But another meaning is the papal union, that this Pope or Hierophant is standing there and he is bringing those two people together in some way. Are they complementary? Are they not? We don't know. That depends. So that's an example of union. Another example of union, let me move myself, is in the Two of Cups. That is all about a partnership, okay, and coming together. This is very much an alchemy card, bringing two things together to create something new. So that's a union card. Let me see. Another union card is in the Lovers, okay, bringing those two. And that card is often it's often described as the union card in the major arcana. It is also a card of a decision. Interestingly enough, a choice. It's a choice card. So yes, Okay, so we've got that union, and then we have duality in the sense of balance. So we talked about that too. So justice is kind of like that balance card. She's holding scales. Okay, scales being present are almost always going to represent some balance in some way. That's pretty obvious. But in this context, she's kind of like the balance of, we have the high priestess who's the divine wisdom, the feminine divine wisdom. We go meet the Hierophant. We're taught, we learn what everybody's been taught. We learn all the things, okay? Then we move on to the lovers. We have a choice what we're going to do with our lives, where we're going to go with that. The chariot is okay, brought that together, and now we know what we're doing. And from that, we move into justice, where we now know how to make decisions and discern different things by realizing that there's different perspectives, and we have to weigh things before we make decisions. We're no longer the fool just like blindly wandering. Okay, we know things. And then usually things happen in our life. We move into the death card. Okay, so here we have what are, I guess in a way they would be like the balance again, because death and rebirth, but in a way they could also be a little bit of like that opposing forces. um so because the death card has those columns in the back with the sun shining up, because, and look, the death card has this papal figure behind. Okay, so that's the duality. There is that death and rebirth. All right, then we move through some other things, okay, and we get to the moon. The moon has those two columns. We're closer to those two columns. We are getting closer to Isis, to Shekinah, to divine wisdom, to Sophia, to knowing the mother goddess, the great goddess, the dark goddess, whatever you want to call her. We are now getting closer to that point of like having some insight as to what is behind her veil. What does she know? Like, we're tapping into that. And what's happening is that lobster that can go between water and land is indicative of things that we know in our unconscious rising to the surface. And it's why we're getting closer to those columns, the same columns they say that are the ones by the high priestess. And oftentimes, a lot of us, that what brings that about are these transformative experiences we have that make us feel like a part of us is gone. Like, you ever have those experiences where you realize the person you were before is not the person you are anymore because you've learned something. Um, so that's kind of how these relate. I'm not done with those yet, but that's where that's kind of the path of the columns. Okay, so another union I forgot to mention is that the color of the columns, that yin yang, black and white aspect of the high priestess, is reimagined in the chariot as those sphinxes. That is the charioteer being that one who draws in that dual nature and is able to drive forward with them. Okay, so awareness of the other. Let's move into that, because I did just mention the lobster. So just like with the moon, we have this element that carries through the deck in some cards that is um, having 1 foot on in water, 1 foot on land. I'm not even sure I caught every single card, but I caught the ones that I thought were important. So as that lobster represents the subconscious coming up, because the lobster can go through both realms. So animals and creatures that are able to swim and live on earth, or walk on land, birds, that's why they're often thought as messenger animals, because of the fact that they can go in these different environments and elements, and they clearly have wisdom that we don't have, because we can't go into the bottom of the ocean, we can't fly. So these animals that can do that, they have a perspective and knowledge that we don't have. So you have that as one of the forms of duality, is that awareness of the other, of being, I'm in this state, but I am now aware that something out there is different. So, and then also the reconciling of the opposites. So, land and water, dry, wet. The water is always represents the emotional body and our subconscious. And so, whereas land will represent our earthly body and being conscious. So we have the star, okay, and the star is that having faith card. So a lot of times we have to have faith in something we don't see. So that's the star is able to go within those realms. She is giving water to both our life on land and our deeper life. Okay, temperance is balancing. Talk about balance, okay? But also like that in between. So that's why I feel like this is more of a reconciling of opposites, because she is moving that water in between the cups. That it's a flow. It's a flow, right? And if we are in moderation, if we are in temperance, we're flowing. Okay, that angel has one foot in the water, one foot on land. Then we get to the Queen of the Cups, who has her gown, just like the high priestess, trickling and turning into rocks, and we don't see the other foot. And the other side, it looks like her gown is trickling into water. And the Queen of Cups is a deep knowing card as well, a deeply intuitive person, um, has connects with that internal knowledge and wisdom and is able to lead and create and guide from that place. So that's the Queen of Cups. So where we have awareness of other elsewhere is in the Two of Wands, where we see, okay, I'm here, I'm looking out, I've got the world in my hand, I've just learned I can change my state, I can change where I am, I can go somewhere else. I don't know what that is yet, but I have just become aware that there is a journey out there for me. So, and another way to look at duality that's also like in the opposing natures way is these crossroads. So that's where we get the Two of Swords, is very much like I have a decision to make. My thinking mind can't make this decision. I there might even be more options out there than what I'm seeing. That's why she's holding swords. Swords are the air element in the tarot, but in general, swords are also a symbol for cutting, like having two edges, the two edges of the sword, double-edged sword. That was the words I was looking for. Double-edged sword. So, and she's got two and they're crossed, and she's blindfolded, she's in front of water because that's where the subconscious is. She's closing her eyes and she's tuning in to the inner wisdom because her thinking mind is at a crossroads. And we have the moon up there, another subconscious feminine mystique symbol. So then I'll finish out the twos, and we get to where the Two of Pentacles is more about balance. And also, to me, I often see this as juggling. And I mean, he looks like he's juggling, but notice the infinity symbol that goes around it. It's like those never ending, the life, how it's never ending juggling, how sometimes we have to realign that balance. I also see this as an option card. I see this sometimes, it comes up in readings as someone has a lot of options in their life, and they are not, they're either trying to do all of it instead of making a choice, or they're not seeing that there's something else out there, and it's preventing them from moving forward, maybe because they're stuck juggling. um but this card especially, it comes up a lot for people who are literally juggling a lot in life, and they are, they and it's all about that balance. So we get over to another theme, that crosses through, and we have the Lovers, the Devil, and Judgment. And so we have opposing natures in the Lovers and the Devil. Look at those cards. Bright and vibrant, dark. Okay, and then we have the theme of look at compositionally, look at how some of these cards tie together. Like when I say compositionally as an artist, I mean how look at the lovers being the being in the top, two figures, and the sun behind, right? Then you look at the devil, he's the being at the top, two figures, and he's got the empty negative space from his bat wings creates a halo. Then you've got the angel at the top, the negative space from their wings create like that little, U shape, and the figures at the bottom. So that's what I mean by compositionally is like these are structured very similarly and then tie together. You have the lovers, union card, choice card. By the time you get to the devil, we're talking about the chains that bind, but do they really bind? Vices, addictions, how stuck are we? Okay. And so if you look closely at this card, if you have your own deck, you see that yes, they have chains around their neck, but they're not that tight. They can break free. So then we get to the judgment call, and we have people rising, being called to their higher purpose. And some people believe that this is supposed to be the same male figure, the same female figure, and their child. I'm not so sure about that because we see so many other figures in there too that are not present in these other ones. So I'm not 100% sold on that, but I do think they relate in being like stages that maybe correlate to each other with dual nature. So we find something, we fall in love with it. Is it necessarily good or bad for us? And at some point we have to choose and decide, whether to stay or go, whether it is good, whether it's bad. And then often through those processes, we get our wake up call. We feel like we're called to a higher nature. So let's see. Okay. I have two other cards on here that I really just, I don't know. It felt like they needed to be here, but I don't know, because so the Magician card and the Strength card are the only two that have the infinity symbol above them. And they look similar to me. Again, we have the very vibrant, bright yellow. The Magician's wearing red and white. Strength is wearing white. Magician's in a garden. Strength is in a landscape. But again, we have these that could be indoors. These are clearly outdoors, but these. And so I believe that the Magician is an early stage of tapping into the fact that I exist, I can do things. Strength is just like how the Chariot is later on like, okay, there's good and bad in the world, there's good and bad in me. I can bring that together. Or, there's ups and downs with me. I can bring that together. I can make this work. Strength is like, okay, here's like unfettered consciousness, unfettered like manifestation, and strength is like, no, I know what I'm doing. I know how to create my life. I got this. I guess that would be union, like, or yeah, I guess that would kind of be a union, like bringing them together, or through relationships. I did put the world card in here because the world card is definitely a union card within itself. It's integration. It's getting to the point where okay, we've just learned a lot from that journey, and now we're not still thinking about it. We're not still processing it. Like we're fully ready to go into a new beginning because we have learned the things. We have grown, we have matured. So, but I believe the world also belongs here because we have the Magician, which is numbered 1. Remember, the Fool is numbered 0, so it's in between these two cards. We have the Magician that has 1 wand raised, the World that has 2. And I have had a really difficult time finding anything out about these double lit candles because they're some people call them wands. To me, those very much look like candles that have lights. Now, of course, I can find all kinds of information about where the saying comes from, the being lit, double lit candle or lit from both ends or whatever. But I don't think that's exactly the same thing. So I'm still working on that. I'm really, really working to find what those double-ended. I mean, other than the as above, so below thing, which may be it, I may be just way overcomplicating it. I have yet to find anything. I have one more thing I wanted to point out about some of the connections with these cards. Okay. Number two, High Priestess. Look at how the High Priestess card itself looks next to the Justice card. And again, we have now, if you just look at the composition, okay, so how Pamela Smith painted these pictures, right? Very similar. Two columns, robed woman, headdress, veil hanging behind her, okay? But we have High Priestess is more blue and, those cool tones. And then we have Justice, where we said this is making decisions from our worldly experience, red, yellow, conscious colors. When you look at the numerology to take the card, Justice card is number 11 in the Rider-Smith Waite deck. Not, it's different in in French decks, but in Rider-Smith Waite lineage, Justice is number 11. 1 plus 1 is 2. Is that wild? Okay, I'm not done. I know that I made other connections the other day, and I just have to. Oh, I forget. I'm totally blanking on them because I remember there was other connections with the numbers, and it was absolutely wild. I remember. I remember one was like with the lovers. Oh, okay. So if you look at the magician and then you look at the Hierophant, all right. Nope, that wasn't it. I don't know where. I should have written this down. It was like in the middle of the night, and I was looking at the board, and all of a sudden, all the numbers like clicked together, and I got so excited, and I can't believe I didn't write it down. Um, I guess if I remember it, I'll like post a follow-up note or something. But there's also like wacky number connections the same way that High Priestess and Justice thing works out. It's like absolutely crazy. I remember one involved the lovers. I think one involved the Hierophant. Okay, wait. So the lovers, that's right. Okay. The lovers are number 6. The devil is number 15. 1 plus 5 is 6. And look at those two cards. They're clearly related to each other. So I think, was that it though? I think there was more. I will have to write it down the next time it strikes me. But I found just wild combinations with that. Um, One thing I point out in another video is this white rose. This is the death and the rebirth card. This white rose, the Fool is holding a white rose in the Fool card. And it's like this is another new beginning card in a way, because it's the death and rebirth card. And so the white rose comes back here just like the columns. So I could go on and on. I wanted to show a little bit, if you're still with me, I wanted to show the Matt Hughes Luna Edition Ethereal Visions deck. And because, as an example of like how this is not going to carry over, and I would be interested. So this is the High Priestess, and I would love to hear people's thoughts on whether or not they think this really greatly influences like the meanings of these cards to eliminate the symbolism, or does the lineage of the meanings carry down because maybe the symbolism is in there differently. I mean, I think maybe I'll have to spend some time really comparing decks to see my own opinion, but I'd be curious if anybody had opinions. So here's that magician card. Sorry, trying to get the donut of my light. And then the chariot is here. So the light and dark sphinxes are there, but if you notice, the columns are now abstracted. So this is the column, but they're both this foil color and they're abstracted. Still, I think still suggesting duality. I do. I think that still suggests duality. I just don't think it necessarily brings that same relation that it brought originally. And then when you look at these, if we're looking at the, the colors, we do still have the red, so we do still have a little bit of the more active colors, and this is a little more passive. But if you notice, Matt Hughes depicts his magician as being inward, and this one is actually more outward, so that's interesting. The Hierophant, I mean, the figure is gone. However, columns are there. Justice, let's see, the columns are gone. We have the sword and the scales, and completely different composition. I mean, not, well, yeah, she's sitting, she's standing, yeah, different composition. Death, we have the hints of a rose down here. The moon, we've lost the lobster and the wolves. The columns, I think, well, now they look more like trees coming around. So I won't go through like every single one. I did want to say though that I think in the twos, this is what I was talking about earlier, because the twos are going to be about duality, whether the symbolism is exactly there or not in the same way that Pamela Smith made it happen. I think no matter what, the number two is referring to balance, duality, harmony, union, all of the things. And so it will still be present in your deck. And maybe, if this is something that interests you, you could spend time with your major arcana of whatever deck is your deck of choice and just lay them out and see what do you notice? What do you notice that carries through? So that was a not so brief introduction into the concept of duality in the Rider Smith Waite Tarot deck. If you've made it this far with me, I love you for that. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, follow, do all of things, share. That's a huge support to me. Comment, ask questions. Any of that is really a huge support. And if you want to go a step beyond, I do have a patron membership for $5 a month that comes with perks and benefits like getting to see these videos first, and have advance notice. So this research is going into a more in-depth project. So this is my way of kind of keeping on that. So you would definitely be getting the first view, the sneak peek of the bigger project too. So otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.